Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Samuel Clemens. Samuel, how you doing today?
I'm good, Ken. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, this is such an honor to have you here. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are the descendant of Mark Twain, which when I saw the last name and the first name, I was like, hold on, where have I seen this before? You know, you are his great nephew, and I think it's amazing that you've continued the writing, and continuing to follow the family lineage that is so important to a lot of us. And you've had an award-winning short film, Surgery, and that won at the Atlanta Film Festival, the Fear Horror Film Festival, Mullins Film Festival. And now you can actually check that out on YouTube through Crypt TV, if I'm not mistaken. Is that's
It's I
available,
think
correct?
it's moved from Crypt TV, I think now to our YouTube channel. So my company's Take the Shot Films. So if you put
Okay.
Take the Shot Films into YouTube, our YouTube channel's there and you can watch it there. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is you guys don't have to do that because I have all of those links right down in the description. So make sure you're checking out Surgery. But like I said, it's a family thing. He's the son of, writer, director. It's Brian Clemens, and a lot of amazing work done there as well. So was there kind of an expectation for you to get into showbiz because of your dad and obviously the lineage of your family?
I mean, not an expectation, but I suppose I was kind of romanticized into it. There was probably no way that I was not going to follow suit because, it was when I was a kid. No one really. I suppose living in England, not many people had parents in the film industry. I mean, particularly in our school, there was no one. No one's parents were in the film industry at all. So it was quite unique. But to us, it was kind of normal, and it's such a exciting and romantic kind of industry that my parents' dinner parties were like, we had directors and stuntmen and actors and whatever writers coming over, and so their stories, particularly the stuntmen when I was a kid, were just you know so enthralling that I felt that. Also, the most important thing is it was possible. There were all these people that had forged careers in the film and television industry, and it was possible. And I suppose that my school at the time was kind of not interested in that, wasn't saying that it was possible. It was sort of a pipe dream. But I had all these sort of people in my life as role models that were possibilities. So I gravitated towards storytelling and whatever route that would be, and that started as for me as an actor, and I trained as an actor at a drama school in London with Tom Hardy, who probably everyone knows. He was in my year,
Ooh,
and
sure.
Michael Fassbender, so as well, and I worked for an actor for nearly 20 years, and then started sort of moving into directing, but I stayed away from writing because my dad was so prolific as a writer. I mean, he wrote for lots of television series here in the UK, but quite a few that travelled to the US. The Avengers, obviously, that travelled to the US, went all over. He wrote for Perry Mason and Father Dowling and TV shows like that. But then he did movies like Highlander 2 and The Golden Voyage of Sinbad and Blind Terror and quite a few Hammer horror movies. So
Yeah.
he was quite prolific. So I felt like I'm going to stay out of that, sandpit, because I felt like I can't touch that. But as I've got older, and when my dad passed away in 2015, I started, and I've made some shorts before, and I'd always written my own shorts because no one else was going to do it. So it was out of necessity rather than desire. And as I started doing it, I enjoyed the process of writing. But it was and I've written a couple of scripts that we're in production for, or sort of pre-production and stuff now, which I've really enjoyed. I absolutely don't work at the speed that my dad did. I mean, he was just, I mean, ridiculous. I mean, like we with his legacy currently. We've just gone through all of the archive, which has taken literally 10 years because everything's on paper. He never worked on even a word processor. Everything was a typewriter, so everything was
Sure.
physical paper. And we've discovered that there are over 400 scripts and ideas that were never made. It's enormous amounts to go
That's
through. So we've just sort of,
incredible.
so I'm like, and I'm worrying about one. I'm like, gosh, he's got hundreds. So yeah, I kind of that's obviously very intimidating, but I kind of was doing my own path as an actor and working that way, and then directing sort of became a natural progression because I was in things and thought, well, this would be better maybe if we just did this, but it's not my job. I
Mhm.
couldn't obviously say that, but I felt like, well, if I'm having these thoughts, then maybe I should consider directing, and so I kind of fell into it more than like absolutely I have to do this. Do you know what I mean? So.
Sure. Well, and that leads us right into The Drowned. Um, it's available now on all platforms. This is actually how you and I connected. Ashley and I did a review on it. You kind of helped me out to understand some of the things that we were wrong about. And I feel like us as content creators, if we make mistakes or we misspeak, it's kind of our responsibility to take accountability for that. And there were some things that were done practically that we thought were done with CGI. And you reached out and I said, you know what? I want to bring you on the show so we can have a conversation about these things and kind of learn so that way I can be more educated on these subjects as well. But like I said, this is available everywhere, guys. It was done through Take the Shots Films and Futuristic Films and distributed by Vertigo, which is a company that I work very closely with. It's received 4 stars in SFX and Starburst magazines, 3 stars on The Guardian. So going into production for this is your feature film debut where you wrote and directed. And your brother George helped with editing, and I believe he's there. Can we bring George in for a little bit?
He is, yeah. I've taken my glasses off, otherwise we'll just look like twins. Here we go. Hello. There we go.
How's it going? Nice to meet you, George. I'm Ken.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too. I'm very well, thank
Um,
you.
so you guys work together, and obviously being family, being brothers, growing up together. Is this something that you've always wanted to do too, George? Is like working in film, editing, stuff like that?
I mean, I've always leaned towards technology, even as a very young boy. My parents remembered when I'd go to the arcades, and even at like 4, I'd have crowds because I used to really love it. So I've always lent towards the technology, but obviously growing up in a film household, you can't help but get that bug for it. But I, although tried being in front of the screen, doing some stage work and things like that at school and whatnot, it just didn't really resonate with me. And when I got to university and did a film course over the various subjects, one of them was editing. And as soon as I jumped onto that, that just resonated so much for me because it sort of fit within my love for technology, fulfilled that creative gap that I felt I was missing at the time. And just as a whole, I just found the whole process kind of fascinating and
Mhm.
love the fact that as an editor, you have, as much power to an extent as the director, the producer, whatnot. It's, it's
Sure.
such a massive, massive part of what ultimately makes or breaks a film.
And I love that because we always have the things. It's like the quarterback. You have your writer, director, actors. Those are your quarterbacks. But then you have your sound designer. You have your composer. You have your editor. That's your lineman. That's what's keeping everything together so these quarterbacks can do their job properly. And I love to talk to people that work behind the scenes. And I'm going to bounce some questions off each one of you here for a second. I'm gonna start with you time this first this time, Samuel.
Yeah.
What was the writing process like going into making your first feature film?
Well, it was it was intense because in all honesty we were going to make another movie, and it's the movie that we're going into production with, hopefully, fingers crossed, next year. And because of COVID, because it's set in Provence in France, we thought, well, we're never going to be able to travel anymore, so we went up and down the country to recce for places that might look like it, or that maybe we would change it to northern France, because it certainly wouldn't have looked like southern France in the UK. It's not warm enough here at all, and the terrain is very different. And that fell apart because we couldn't find the location, and one of the actors' schedules changed, and so I suddenly had a gap of this period of time which I booked off to make this. And I was quite depressed at the time, and my partner said, well, why don't you just write something else? And I was like, yeah, I'll just write something else. It didn't take me like the whole of COVID to work the other one out, so okay. But then I just thought, well, I didn't want to be the guy sit there, at the networking evenings just talking about making movies and not making one.
Right.
So I immediately went, right, what do we have? And one of the actors in it, Dominic, he was a friend, and he mentioned this house that he used to stay at, which is the house in the movie, and his family own a part of it. And he said it was terrifying. He hated staying there, thought it was really spooky. He'd sleep in the car, and I was like, great, where is that? And so the next day, I went to recce it and went, let's go. And I had a sort of kernel of an idea of like I suppose the heist element of, these guys have come together. I wasn't sure what that was going to be yet and what they'd stolen, but I knew that let's do that. And then they stumble on a place that they don't know what they've stumbled upon.
Sure.
A little bit Evil Dead sort of ish.
Hmm.
And then I recce'd it, and then I wrote the film to the location, so I knew what we had, what we didn't have, and because we knew, again, the house were like, yeah, well, you can use it, but you've only got this window, which was about 7
Sure.
days, 8 days, wasn't it? I think 7 8 days.
Yeah, yeah.
And which is so such a short space of time. But I thought, well, we've got a deadline now, we've got a goalpost to aim for. And that was May the 4th when the idea came, and we started shooting at the house on the 1st of August. So
Oh,
to bring all that together and try and find finance and the actors, and because I worked as an actor, I felt that, well, I knew that the days were going to be very long. I knew that it was going to be tough. It was like going to be in the trenches. So I felt like I needed to know all the actors. So to go, look, guys, we're going to, and as many of the crew as I brought lots of my crew from our other short films that had worked with us before, to go, look, we will be doing long days some days, and there's no way around it. And that's only because we've got such a short window to be able to shoot there. And so I was writing it sort of all the way up until we were doing it and making changes and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, one of the actors' agents said, "Can we see the script?" I'm like, "You can see the first 30 pages because that's where I
right.
got to." And then, but I was writing it sort of to them. So I was writing it to their strengths, knowing, who they are. And I've worked with quite a few of them before, and some not, but so much, but some much more regularly. But I mean, it did sort of flow out of me, and it came out from the idea, I think, of the location and what it could be. I knew that as a first-time filmmaker, you only get your debut once, and I felt that
Yeah.
doing something linear might just disappear amongst all other linear movies that exist. And I love linear movies. I'm not like a David Lynchian sort of. I mean, I love him, but he's not like my favorite director at all. But I felt
Sure.
that doing something a bit more lyrical, poetic, that had a bit of ambiguity, that allowed people to have a conversation about what they thought it might be, might help people maybe watch it a second time, because there's more in it each time that you see it. And so there was a
Yeah.
conscious decision to try and give it a level of ambiguity to promote conversation, and also to have a few shots in the movie that I think might stay with you. So that was the intention, and it was just very, very intense, because once we started, it was almost over, wasn't it? The moment we started, it was so quick.
Right. And I am going to say real quick, guys, we are not going to be spoiling this film at all. This is a film, like you said, it is open for interpretation at the end. So I definitely want you to go into this as blind as possible if you haven't seen our review already. And like I said, not only do I have their shorts down in the description, I have their social media links as well as the links to watch The Drowned. So make sure you guys are checking the film out before you watch our review. And you can finish the interview, because we're not going to spoil anything for you. But make sure you're checking the film out, because, like he said, first time feature debut, and whether you love it or you hate it, you're gonna remember this movie. That's something I'm gonna promise you. You're gonna remember it. It's very well made, and there's some choices that they make in there that you're gonna be questioning. What direction are they going with this? Why did we go this way? So, George, obviously you were doing editing, but with Samuel being your brother, were you on set for a lot of this too?
Yeah, I was on set for the entire thing. I mean, wherever possible as an editor, I prefer, if it allows, to be on set and editing, just because I can flag things up before they become a problem. And I'm very quick at what I do, having done many features now. So I can usually be at a point where by the end of the day, I can be flagging up stuff and say, hey guys, I haven't got this. So maybe it'd be worth on the next day to get a few cutaways while you're changing setups and whatnot. So that is, for me, I think all editors really should be on set. In terms of this one, it was also very useful being a micro budget, because we just didn't have the crew that you'd expect. So from my perspective, yes, I was editing for a large portion of the set, But other times I was doing running duties, you know,
Driving.
drive a lot of driving and picking up equipment and things. Because again, from what I said to Sam, I said, look, you know, as the director, you've got enough on your plate. And the two people I wanted kind of protected within this was our DOP Fernando Reyes and Sam Clemens, because they both needed their A game given the actual circumstance we're in and the fast-paced nature of it. So I just said, look, if there's anything anyone needs, I can drop the edit, I can run off, do it, because I'd rather do that and you actually get the footage that I need to actually make
Right.
the edit work than actually just sit there and edit. Because again, as I said earlier, I'm very quick and I can sort of usually play catch up. When I've done films in the past, there was one in particular where I came on a week late, and within about 3 days I was already up to speed to where they'd already shot. So I know even if I take some time off, I can still get to the place where I can be most effective.
See, and I think that that's true because I think that a lot of people that I've talked to that do sound design and composers, they like to kind of be there on set because they're working as it's happening. You know, this is what we could be doing here. This is what we could be doing there. And like you said, you're catching continuity errors right in, you know, right there in real time. Hey, can we do that again because this happened? And I think that's very important, especially on a micro budget indie film. We got to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. And I think that, like I said, this film is going to have people talking. And I love how you said that, Sam, because that's very true. This is a film where people are going to be talking afterwards. And there's a lot of scenes in this film that are very heavy. One of my favorite scenes, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it involves a pole and some ropes. And it's a heavy, heavy scene. So I know you guys were really short on time. So what was the experience on set like for this film?
I mean, you know, my sort of bread and butter now is I direct a lot of audio drama. So I do a lot of things with for the property Doctor Who and Thunderbirds and all those sort of shows from that period. And we do audio dramas now. So that's my bread and butter. I also do a lot of theatre as well, and short films as and when I get a chance to do them. And I work at drama schools and film schools. So to keep the muscle going, because directors, I think, sadly, you don't get to direct very often. You get to, if you're a movie director, you get to direct once every few years. And so you know, most of the time you're probably the most inexperienced person on set. All the crew are working 300 days of the year, so they know what they're doing.
Sure.
So I think it's important to you know, keep the muscle going. So when it came to this, I you know, I'd done lots of shorts, but doing a feature is very different. I think the level of intensity was hard because it was the time constraint, really was the difficult part,
Yes.
because we had to get 8 pages in a day, every single day. So I've never done anything where you finish a scene and you can't even think about, you're like, on to the next one, on to the next thing, on to the next. So I get to the edit and I'd forgotten sort of what we'd shot because you just didn't have time to really think about it. And but it was a lot of fun. And I think because I'd spoken to the actors before and I'd written it sort of for their qualities, we worked out what all the subtext was, because it's not what you're saying, it's what you're not saying, which is important.
Sure.
And so when we came on set, they all knew that, and I didn't have to do a great deal of work with them, so I could concentrate on trying to get enough coverage, because, you know, I mean, we were lucky on some, if we got like more than 2 takes, you know, we have to move on because it was just quite full on. But it was a fun experience. I mean, it was, you know, this look, if you're making a movie, what a privileged position to be in. So I'm
Sure.
under no illusion that like it was an incredible experience. Would I do things differently? Of course, if I had time, I could go back and change things. Would I cover things slightly differently? Yeah, we all would. But I mean, I think given the what we managed to achieve in that time frame, I think was quite remarkable. And we progressively, so we started the film sort of in the day, and then after the first few days it just turned into night shoots for the end.
Sure.
And so the last shot that you're talking about, actually, with the pole and the rope, and we won't ruin it, but we shot that sequentially over one evening, so the whole thing.
Really?
So that was we didn't come back, we did it, we had to do it as the light was going, so we just kept doing, I mean, all the way for that character's sort of you know, journey, that
Yeah.
the moment that happened to the end, that was all on the same evening, which was kind of and into the morning, obviously. And that was sort of that was like, I don't know, against the clock. It was but it was a lot of fun, because you're like, okay, we've got to go, okay, this shot, okay, we've got to
Yes.
go end board, okay, next one, doesn't matter, we'll worry about that later. You know, it's just
The
crazy.
intensity and the adrenaline of let's go, let's do it, let's get it. And the scene that you're talking about too, because there's a lot of beautiful and amazing shots that are done here, especially. And again, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but with underwater shots and things that are happening on the water. Now, with you, George, you're doing all these editing for these scenes. Is it a little bit harder for you to do editing when it's sequentially done through the night without all the extra light of the day, or do you prefer a sequential cut when you're doing your type of this type of film?
It really just depends on the film. I mean, the thing is, if you get something sequential and it's set out in the way this is set out, then really there's very limited amount of ways that you can actually put it together. If it's done out of sequence, or say they've got the budget and time to do it over a section of days, then yeah, there might be more ways that I'd look at cutting it to try and give that visceral kind of feeling that the character goes through in the particular scene you're talking. But I don't really have a preference either way. I mean, as an editor, I like a challenge, and I like taking on board different directors' approaches. On this particular occasion, yes, that one was sequential, so for me, it was fairly quick for me to actually put together, which, on the basis of what we're doing with this film, is kind of useful because we could see pretty quickly whether that was working or not, or whether we might potentially have to do some pickups on a shoot, which we did actually for that particular scene. We did shoot some stuff on blue screen, which we didn't really need, thankfully. But obviously we knew we had some studio days. So again, because it being a micro budget, we thought, let's use a little bit of time just to get some coverage in case, when, as I like to say, you're seeing the wood from the trees and you've got the entire first assembly together, you do have a few options. But on this instance, it was absolutely fine. And again, I think it comes down to the director you're working with. If they've got a very clear vision and they know the compositions and what they're going to work with, and they give you very limited things, it can be a disaster. If I'm doing like sort of first time filmmakers, not film, well, students, let's say, when I've done quite a few of those. And other times it can be absolutely brilliant because they've just gone for a very distinct way, but it doesn't give me any options to get you out of trouble unless I start being very creative and start messing about with scene orders and things like that, which is obviously another way to go to try and problem solve. But quite frankly, yeah, I'm quite happy with either sequential, non-sequential,
Mhm.
as long as it's shot well, good composition, and some good performances. That's all that really matters to me.
And we had like, I mean, we had the shoot of the house was like the main unit, and then we had like a couple of days a month before, because we Ramaz Studios, that also help produce this, they're a small virtual production studio, and so they came in as producers on the film. So we were able to shoot quite a little bit with virtual production, and then when we got to the main body, that we knew that there were other bits, because we had a little bit at the end that we could go back to the virtual production to go, well, what can we stitch in that maybe we didn't quite get that because we missed that because of the timing. And that was, and I think that's one thing I'm so proud of, is being able to use some of the most sort of I suppose technologically advanced pieces of filmmaking using a virtual production studio on such a small film, and then making it feel larger than it is. And we did things that are full 3D, and we did things that are like full virtual production. We did things that are just plates, and we did things that are sort of 2.5, where there's a little bit of 3D but a plate as well. So we kind of learned what you can and can't do in it. And so it felt like sort of, I suppose, 3 shoots, and then there was one pickup day, or half a day for some droning, because we didn't have time for it, so we had to come back, and we knew we needed it, but we were going to have to find an extra day.
Yeah. Plus, in the summer when we were shooting, doing drones would have been difficult because there are a lot of beach goers, so that would have been
Sure.
reaching out afterwards. So it just made sense to delay that to a little bit later when it's colder and people aren't going to be going swimming as much.
Oh yeah, there
Yeah,
was.
because the last thing you need is someone up in the upper right corner doing the doggy paddle while you're trying to get some of your drone shots
And
in.
you wouldn't believe how many, on the first day that we turned up and we booked the house, and they own that sort of prison sea bit, that lagoon little bit.
Yeah.
It was full of like 150 holiday makers with their kids, picnics and all that stuff, and we're like, oh my god. And we had to move them on, but every day, because it's in the middle of nowhere, another army of holiday makers would come down, and we'd have to try and tell them to go away, and they'd be like, no, I've been coming here for years. And so we'd have to shoot around them because they wouldn't move, and we're like, well, we can't call the police. It's not like I mean, yeah, that was
a
very
fun
difficult.
aspect.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
immediately
Well,
challenged.
and I can understand where that would be a challenge too, because a lot of people are entitled. Well, I'm already here, so I'm not leaving.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
just have some courtesy, have some respect. Um, Now, another thing I wanted to touch on is you have some amazing underwater shots in this film. One I can talk about because it is in the trailer, but when you have the underwater shot of the firearm firing,
Yeah.
what was it like filming that sequence?
Well, that was I mean, again, it's being, I suppose, creative with what you have. We couldn't afford to go to a big tank where you have to have, proper, like, lifeguards, what they call the safety divers. And all that, because you need a little bit of training for the actors and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it was such a low budget, really, that we couldn't really afford to do that. But so we found the tank near us that was where you could submerge yourself, but you could jump up if you needed to. So that
Sure.
frame is about as big as the tank could possibly be. And so it was a lot of sort of stitching work together to make those things work. So it was a bit of trial and error with those things, but it was just, that was probably one of the most luxurious days, because we had a day, didn't we? We had a day at the tank, which meant that we could keep trying things to get something like
Sure.
that shot really to work. And we would we obviously wouldn't fire a gun underwater, but we had a light that would go off. So we had a light that would go off, and he'd do that, and so at least we'd have the actual physical light that would give the sense of it. And then later, obviously, we that was visual effects to put it in there, and he would react with it. And so we just keep trying it to go. I think we've got 3 or 4 in there that will kind of work. And then when we gave it to our visual effects guy, he filled it in pretty quickly. He was like, okay, this is going to work. So yeah, it was quite nice. That was a you hope these things work and you sort of plan for them, but you never really know what the final result is going to quite be. But actually, it was sort of as good as I thought we could possibly get it.
Sure. This next question is kind of for both of you. With you guys being brothers, you grew up
Yeah.
together. You're going to be brutally honest with each other. You're not afraid of hurting each other's feelings. Do you think that that's more of a benefit when you're working together as director and editor, because one of you can say, "Hey, I don't like this," and the other person's not going to take it as offensively because you're blood? Do you think that that relationship helps to make things more honest when you're filming together?
I mean, for us, absolutely. It's the nice thing is we can speak without speaking. I can look to him at set, and he understands what I need, and vice versa. And as you say, having that completely open, honest, approach is very, very handy, because you're not going to sit there and go, "Oh, I'm going to tiptoe around the issue." You can just come in and go, "Sam, this isn't working. We need to change it." And he can say the same to me in terms of the edit. I mean, it's a skill I've personally learned over times, is to kill your darlings, which is quite a difficult thing as an editor, but it's very important when it comes to dealing with any editor, directors or producers. But yeah, as a brother working team, it works perfectly. And we actually co-directed Surgery, which I know you mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
And what we do in that scenario, which we still kind of do a little bit
Yeah,
of this, is when we were co-directing, I would focus on the monitor and he would focus on the actors.
Sure.
And that way you get the best of both worlds, because as a director, you're often going, should I be with the actors or should I be with the monitor looking at the frame? And, he can inherently trust me to know, that we've got it. And he would quite, on that particular shoot, he would ask me and say, "George, have we got it?" And I'd say either yes or no. And if I said yes, we move on. If no, then because I'm looking at it from an editor's perspective. So even if it wasn't the best take, I can sit there and go, I know I've got what I need to cut
Sure.
from the mistakes I've already got. So even though this last one had its problems, with the other ones, I've already kind of mapped out in my head how I'm going to put that together.
But also,
Exactly.
I can ask, like, the thing is, I suppose it's the ask, in that, being an actor, I know what I'm asking of an actor if I'm asking them to do something difficult, because I know what it feels like to do that. So if you've got to jump in the sea and it's cold, it's not fun for anyone.
Right.
And so you go, well, let's limit this to 10-15 minutes of someone's time, because they're going to be freezing and they're going to get grumpy, and we can do that. And so but with when it comes to the edit with George, it's sort of, let's try something, and you're like, oh God, okay. And we go through, and I do annoy you a lot by going, let's just try this and try, and actually out of that trial and error, something comes out. And also he does something which is very irritating but also brilliant, is that in every movie that we've made, or short film, whatever, he'll do a comedy version of the movie, which then you can never unsee. But out of the comedy version sometimes comes an edit that you're like, that is just brilliant, and
We got to use it.
we're doing, put that in, and it's not maybe comedic, but just the timing from one thing to another, just it changes it. So yeah, so I think I allow the comedy, and he allows me to sort of push him to, particularly with those bits that I remember were tough with him, with the sort of the trance sequences in the film, and they get more and more intense as they go on. And that was, that's because they're being sort of, psychologically attacked. And that was quite tough to edit. That was, it's not pleasant to edit it, obviously, because it's quick and it's sort of,
It's also finding the logic in it as well.
Yes.
It's quite difficult.
Yeah. Finding the logic in it. Yeah. Because you do it on the day when you're filming it, going, well, I think this is going to cut together, but it's hard to think in such speed of editing. When you're doing like, okay, action, and you do some stuff and you go, right, what do I need more, this side or this side, or what do I need?
Right.
So I think we work quite well together. We've done quite a lot. Well, we don't hate each other, I don't think. That's all right so far. Not so far.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking your time to come here and hang out with me and talk about the film. And before I let you go, I always bounce back to one question. Here on Sledgehammer Horror, the big thing we do on the podcast is my first horror movie, where we bring guests on and talk to them about the first horror movie they watched and what it meant to them. Do you guys remember what the first horror movie you watched was?
Go on,
I mean, I'm trying to think, but I believe it was probably Nightmare on Elm Street. But the problem we have is that Dad would often have a lot of stuff on TV, because if we were young and couldn't sleep, his motto was like, well, you're happy to sit here, but you're going to watch what I'm going to watch. And so he'd watch a lot of things. So Sam had a particular moment with The Fly, but the one that sort of sticks with me that I remember being like, okay, was the Nightmare on Elm Street. And I sort of fell in love with the character. Ironically, I didn't find it that scary. The one that did freak me out, which isn't a horror, was Legend. And it was just the image of Tim Curry as the devil. That image alone as a kid terrified me. But the first horror that I truly remember getting on board with was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, you said Nightmare on Elm Street, and actually, I remember being frightened of it, knowing that one of my mate's elder brothers had it, and I was like, "Oh no, we shouldn't be watching this," but I kind of want to watch it. Oh God! And then I was terrified, and then we started it, and actually, yeah, you're right. It wasn't really that scary. It was kind of thrilling, but not like scary. But I think the first thing that really got me, like where I really, and I watched because our favorite movies growing up were things like Terminator and RoboCop, Predator, and that was like when I was 10. I loved that. Was kind of movies that I loved then. I loved all the Disney stuff as well, but that was like and Aliens, and they were scary, but not in the. I mean, they were violent and they were kind of grotesque in place. I mean, like RoboCop's beginning is hideous. It's still hideous today in a great way. But was The Fly. The Fly down. We watched The Fly, and it was when he vomits on his hand, and his hand is. I'm checking out, man. That's it. Out the door. I think body horror frightens me. That's probably why Surgery is quite rough. Even though we've made it, I still find that quite tough because it's sort of body horror. But and that's why I think with this, I wanted to do something that was a bit more. I don't know, a bit more psychological. I think than the graphic nature of Surgery. Maybe.
Sure.
The Fly. I'm going The Fly. Yeah.
And that's a great choice. Love that film. I'm a Seth Brundle stan myself. So I do want to remind you guys, I do have all of their social media links, the links for Surgery and the links for The Drowned in the description. Now, you're going to want to follow them because coming up, the next film, On the Edge of Darkness, it's a pre-World War II thriller. I'm very excited to see what they're bringing for us. So this is based off of one of your father's writings, correct?
Yeah, it's a play that he wrote called Strictly Murder. But basically, it was his answer to before it was towards the winter years of his life. He got fed up with technology kind of destroying the thriller. That basically, if you have a mobile phone, you have to spend the beginning going, "How do we get rid of the mobile phones?" and all that kind of stuff, which we even have to do in the Drowned. And so he decided to set a thriller in the past, and he was a child of the war. He was born in 1931, so he grew up as a kid. I mean, for him, he had a great time. He thought it was like really exciting during the Blitz and the bombs happening and finding bullet casings and running around buildings that had been blown up. I mean, he had a great time. Obviously, it was terrible, but his imagination was firing. So this play is set in March 1939, and it ends with the announcement of war. So it's that period, that build-up, that sort of rise of fascism, which sort of seems a little bit more apt recently now in parts of the world as well. But I think it's just a really good thriller. It's a good story, and the play happens all in one room, but the story that comes out in that one room is massive. So when I directed the play, there are huge sequences in it where you're watching a character behaving or doing something or performing an action for maybe 5 to 7 minutes with no dialogue, which on stage is quite rare. You don't usually get that. It's usually, you know, a lot more talking heads. So it lent itself immediately to sort of being quite cinematic. So once I directed on stage and I took it around the country and watched it with, you know, 100 audiences, I knew it worked. I could see it working all the time, but I was like, how do we take this out of this medium into another? It took me a while to work it out, but I think we've cracked it now. And I'm really excited to do it because some of the characters are based on some of our family members' experiences during World War II, and they're kind of, you know, so there's a lot of you know, familial elements to it, and it means quite a lot to me personally, and so I'm very excited to get going with this one. So hopefully, touch wood, next year we'll be doing that. But yeah.
I can't wait to see it. And if you're doing any type of crowdfunding or anything, please let me know. I know this is a horror channel, but man, that sounds horror enough for me. And I'd be happy to do whatever we can to help you guys out with that. I'm very excited to see the direction that this goes. So, I know I said it before, guys, but this is one last time. All those links are in the description. So please make sure you're checking it out. Sam, George, please don't go anywhere. I do have a couple more questions for you guys. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Those links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.